All right, this Hangout's live on air. Happy Friday, everyone. Today is November 28th, and you're hanging out with my community manager, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. As always, you can chat along with us over at our Twitter chat at #CMGRHangout, where I know a lot of you are hanging out right now. If you love what you're seeing today and you have a great idea for a topic, please go to our website at www.mycmgr.com, where you can click on participate and join us someday or give us a great topic. So kick things off, today is Black Friday, and we all know that Black Friday is all about deals, but today we want to talk about something beyond just a little hit of a deal, and that's about loyalty and retention. Caring about things caring about the long haul in a relationship with our communities. So Sherry had done some research, as she always does, and found a still timely post from 2012 from Alex Hillman, and the title of that post is in the description of this Hangout, and we'll add it to YouTube, and it says, "How do you know if your community is leaking?" So you can probably Google for that and find that article as well. But Sherry, why don't you say hi to everyone and just give us your thoughts a little bit on the article that you read.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry. I lead community and user experience at Rebellion Media, as well as co-produce CMGR Hangout here with Brew. And I was looking earlier and found this article, like Brew said, and really it was just a good read from Alex. He was talking about how you need to know basically where that hole is in your bucket so that you're not losing people faster than you're actually adding people, because it's just frustrating, right? You're making no progress despite all the hard effort and work that you're putting into it. And actually, I used to work for a company that did loyalty retention for e-commerce, so it's just a concept that I'm pretty familiar with. So yeah, it's something like it's easy to focus on increasing the headcount and forgetting about actually looking at retention, which makes such a huge impact in your growth, for sure. And I'm sorry, I'm totally trying to wing this and messing up big time. But I had a quote here I wanted to share, which is this: that retention is the community metric that describes how long a member is actively participating. And like everything in communities, the value of retention is in noticing patterns to predict the health of your community. So that's kind of where this topic was coming from today.
Awesome. Also wanted to give a shout out to Emma over on Twitter, who's helping us moderate there today. And Dom, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I am community manager hangouting from a couch in Lansing, Michigan, instead of Grand Rapids, celebrating Thanksgiving with the family. So I'm having a great time here. I am the chief social officer for Gathering and podcaster with the Trained Monkey podcast with Emma, who's rocking it out over on Twitter. And I saw she got blown up as the My CMGR secret identity today already. So, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I absolutely love this topic. It's something that I am really jazzed up to talk about. So.
Awesome. And Bessie, how are you? Oh, are you frozen? Oh, yeah, I think you just want to hit your mute button. Betsy. Yep, there you go.
I'm here. I'm having issues apparently, but I am here. Hi, everybody. I am also very excited to be here in the chat today. It's my first time joining you, and I am in a snowy Massachusetts, enjoying the chat today also from my home. So it's all good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. And Amy, do you have your audio working? We can't see you right now, but maybe your audio's on?
Oh, I think it is.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. If you want to just let everybody know who you are and kind of what you do. All
right. I'm a student at the University of Florida, and I'm joining from my UF PUR class. It's a social media management class. I'm currently in Orlando. And I'm excited to learn about all this today.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And Abhishek, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm fine. So, it's been a while I've been here. So, I'm Abhishek. I'm joining from India, and not so happening. It's not Black Friday out here. It's a very normal day out here, and I have been working on a management tool, community management tool, which helps you evaluate the community. And the idea is that if you can't measure, you can't improve. So that's pretty much what I've been working on. It's been a year and a half. We have seen some success, and we'll see some success in the future. That's why I'm really excited about today's topic. How do you measure the people who you want to retain, how you don't want to retain?
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you could join us. And Aaron, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm Aaron Silvers. I've been managing an open source standards effort for the last 3 or 4 years, I guess. And in addition to that, I run a couple of communities of art with my partner, and I'm happy to be here. It's my first time.
Awesome. And I am Baru, Director of Awesome with Be the Change Revolutions, where I do community management, some account management, and social strategy. Also, I guess co-produce my CMGR here with Sherry. And so awesome. All right, so we are going to just jump right into the first question here, which is what percentage of your time is focused on acquisition versus retention? So in kind of community building and maintaining, what do you think is the balance?
Well, I'll jump in here first. At least for me, when it comes to gathering, we are brand new. We have a very, very small community, and technically no product yet. But a lot of what we do focus on right now is acquisition. However, even within that, as far as the people that I'm continuing to try to talk to, it's the majority of my time is focused. I would say probably 65 to 70% of it is on retaining those conversations and trying to keep that going. I am very, very much in the camp of retention is more important, I would even say, than acquisition, because that loyalty, at least if you're focused mostly on retention, I think that the acquisition more comes from your community, not as much from you, and you could really focus on building into those relationships.
Yeah, I would double down on what Dom said. I mean, I probably spend about 75% of my time on retention. That's really and exactly to Dom's point, like, if the community is engaged and they stay engaged, like, that's going to attract more people into the community by themselves. You don't have to go out and do a lot of word spreading. Now, there's a building phase of community building where, like, it becomes really important to um, like, really focus on orientation, alignment, or not even alignment, but just orientation. Like, where is everybody going? How do you get them even in the door and hear about it to begin with? But once you have that wheel kind of rolling, your focus has to be keeping the wheel rolling, not trying to push it further. So,
So I would rather add three. So one is acquisition, the other is retention, and the third is the product or the cause you're trying to get your community around. So I usually divide equal time once you have the community. So you always have to also work on your product or the community. Otherwise, the cause gets lost and the community starts to lose interest, and then it's very difficult to either acquire or to retain at the same time. So this is what I would like to add to it. The product is equally important, or the cause is equally important as well.
I think that's exactly that's a very good point, because at least for us, and B2B, we try to educate customers as well to make sure that we retain them. And it's very difficult when you're in a market that your sales take longer, and you really have to nurture that customer so that they come back and shop from you again. It's very important to put the quality in the product and put the quality in what you're giving the consumer, not just how you're interacting with them. It's just not posting and just giving them whatever. You have to educate. I think for us, at least in B2B, that's our biggest assets to maintain retention.
So how do you, let's kind of talk about measurement for a minute here. How do you measure the average membership lifetime in your community? Do you have anybody have any tips on that, or really within their communities how they're measuring?
At least for me, what I'm doing right now is I'm keeping a pretty detailed. I don't know the scalability of this because we're pretty small, like what I said, at least what I'm working with. But I'm using a Google Doc myself to sort of keep some information on certain people that I'm interacting with, and I know that when my first interaction is, I could sort of tell by the time when they're sort of added to a list. And I'm sort of trying to figure out a good way to do all of that, as opposed to just essentially an Excel document. But I'm sort of figuring out when the communication is, when things sort of take it to the next level, and what that really, where that really measures. And I have a different approach for people in each separate category. Somebody that's interacting with us, 5 times a week, they're on a different list than somebody that's once. But I'm trying to get that once to 3 times to 5 times. So I can sort of tell how I'm measuring them throughout that to see how long they've been there and sort of pushing them through. Obviously, I'm a one-man operation with that now, but I would love to hear what anybody else sort of does for communities that are much larger than ours.
I mean, you'd be surprised. We run into the same issue in which how do we measure this growth? And again, because we are not in the consumer side of things, our growth is much slower, and we do measure it the same way. Like who's interacting with us, how often are they doing this, and is it for just service for our products, or is it for new purchases, or is it for training? And within those categories of who interacts with us highest to lowest, we also see what kind of interaction it is. And so that way we see, okay, there is a higher requirement or need for training products or for training information, and we focus our content on that as well, and reaching out via email or with new presentations on SlideShare or anything like that that will get them coming back even more and get those people that are on the lower scale of engagement to be more active. But it really, I don't think it's that different from like a small organization to a super large with thousands of followers, because you still need to make sure that you're giving the audience what they want. So,
from a measurement standpoint, I would think it's probably a little bit easier to measure things like closed communities or communities that at least have some sort of like system in place, right? And where you might have a join date or a membership date, or even in the case of like a product, I'm thinking if you're building community around your product, maybe you're logging when that person first downloaded your product, when's the last time they used it, and then kind of using that as a measurement. But it's interesting when I think about utilizing community tactics and building just consumer-based communities just around a brand or a service, a lot of times just purely through social media or through the web, not really having like a please sign up here, right? And I'd be interested, if anybody has any thoughts on specifically how you measure, and figure that stuff out, if that makes any sense.
So I'll step in and share what we do with the brands we have worked with in the past. So it's old school market research techniques. You pick up sample profiles, or you pick up representative profiles. Say, for example, if there is brand A, which could be a consumer brand, you pick out 5 representative profiles and you collect more profiles every month. Say you pick 50 and you divide them between those categories. So one could be as simple as the ones, as we just said, the most active or the least active or somewhere in between, and then you keep churning the building up what are the 5 things they're always interested in, what are the things which got them interested or they were not interested in. There are various measures which you can look. So if all of you have read Groundswell, so they gave a very nice graded categories, which was a technographic profile on the basis of how the people are involved on these various platforms. And if you keep maintaining that profile, which can be an Excel sheet or a UI-based tool, which we are trying to build, and then you can chart out your strategies, be it content, be it your response, moderation, and so on and so forth. So this is what we do with the brands where we have 1 million community members or more than 10,000 or 50,000. This is our way of doing it.
I think Abhishek has got a really good point there in terms of like the project approach. When in the open source effort that we're doing, that we've been doing for the last couple of years, like GitHub is a really good and appropriate like this is exactly the concept that we're coming together to do. There's already like we can see contributions, even if it's just like as small as like issue reports or bug reports or something like that, or edits or pull requests or whatever. Like there's a lot of different ways that not only can observe the time frame in which someone has belonged to the community, but also like their level of engagement and contribution to it. And then when you take into account, a lot of most of us are dealing with groups that are distributed, right? So you start looking at like who's really active on the mailing list and who's asking more questions, and you start getting a feel for that stuff. Now you can quantify a lot of that and keep spreadsheets, and for some communities that you probably need that. Like I would consider like an open source project a very generative community, in which case then there are already outcomes associated with it. I have an existing community, what I would call like a community practice, and then we're launching like yet another kind of learning community. And in that instance, like I think that those types of communities are probably measured in many ways by the events that they have. So the way that people benchmark their time is by which events they went to, especially if they're like on a regular basis, like annual or semi-annual or whatever. And then you start kind of getting this framing of like, okay, who are the wise old mentors in the group, which starts getting you into thinking about onboarding and orientation into the community.
Yes, I mean you build hierarchies, and then you don't build an hierarchy, but you have that hierarchy that these guys are mentors, and these guys are rookies, and these guys are amateurs, and then they're more experienced. So if I just talk about Facebook, now it's a goldmine of profiles. I mean, what you can do is pick out, and it does not allow you to automatically just scrape it through some script. What you have to do is do it manually. You pick a profile and you maintain that profile, and you keep going back to it and follow the same procedure which you suggested. So I pretty much second what you just said.
Well, and I love the concept of any type of tool to measure retention, or even just the context of the relationships, especially for brands that are doing a lot of business over Twitter, and kind of knowing how long you've tweeted with that person, what you've all said, when's the last time you made a contact, things like that. I know a social CRM is good for that as well. I'm going to bring in quick a question from Twitter. And for everybody watching, please know this is always part of our Friday Hangouts. You guys have a question for us, please tweet it. We'll definitely bring your question in, and we'll answer it the best we can. So this is from Leah, and thanks for joining us, Leah. She says, are there any tools to measure retention? And Dom, I think you maybe have a tool answer.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a big shout out to somebody that I know we've had on a couple of panels before. John Ferreira is over at Nimble. Nimble's a fantastic tool to be able to use for that. I've used it personally for myself, but it gives you such a wonderful way of connecting with people, with contacts on every social media platform, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, however you actually connected with those people. It is absolutely fantastic. You can schedule times when you know that you need to get a hold of them. And, obviously for me personally, I handle things a little differently on my own personal brand. But when it comes to a community, it's a great way to be able to say, I need to connect with this person again, or make sure that I connect with them within this certain amount of time. It breaks it all down. And, John actually on one of our panels, I remember, I think it was the last time I was on a couch, but this time, then I was in Ann Arbor and not Lansing. But he did a little bit of a demo, essentially, on one of these Hangouts, and it was, NimbleWorks fantastic. So that's definitely a tool to make sure you check out.
I'd like to piggyback on there too, which I totally agree. I use Nimble all the time, as a lot of people know. I love Nimble. But also it's important to look at, if you're using a community platform, how that can help you as well. Like we use Vanilla Forms, for example, and it actually allows me to go in and see when someone first signed up versus when they last visited the site, so I can tell if they've been there for a while or not.
Yeah, and then, sorry I wasn't listening before, Dom, but so if you mentioned this, let me know. But Sprout Social also does a really good job just keeping track of, how often you've been communicating with people, and so I wanted to make sure I mentioned them as well. All right, so yeah, if you have any questions, please tweet us. Let us know what's on your mind, and until then, we'll jump into number 3, which is, what tips have you found to help onboard a new member so they can return?
I'll answer it.
So they return.
Well, I think one of the points that was mentioned last is the seniority of your members in your community, and at least, again, for us in the B2B, and I think I've heard it from other colleagues in other industries that are also B2B, they use their community members who are senior, and they form that liaison with them, by communicated in public or via messaging, asking answering their most common questions, and sometimes giving them the incentive to say, this is a new product. Would you like to test it out before anyone? And by that action itself, they will promote it to their networks, and they promote it to the group, and they become your promoters to new members, and it becomes this relationship that it's organic and that's natural between people who are interested in the same topic, and it doesn't seem like it's forced, because you're actually having a relationship with one of your members, which is helping you build a bigger relationship with your new members. So for us, that mentorship level is very, very important for welcoming in new community people into our variety of groups and retaining them there.
One of the things that I think about as far as onboarding is just something simple with just a little bit of public recognition. I know many years ago, there's a community I found on Twitter called #UsGuys, and I remember after chatting with them for a while, one of their members did a ding ding ding, ring in the tribal bell, welcome to the tribe, and that's still, like, just that one tweet still holds with me today when I think about things to make people feel awesome, here was this community that welcomed me in, and then it was just that whole concept of a bell ringing in a way, right? Made me imagine that something big was happening because I was now a member, so I think making sure that during your onboarding process of a new community manager, you give them a moment of awesome, an OMG moment. I think that's also really important.
Well, Brew, remember, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. So I just, if you just want to have your Zuzu's pedal moment, that's cool. But yeah, I agree with you completely, though. I mean, you have to take that moment. The fact of the matter is that if we were thinking about this 3 years ago, being a part of a community was just cool, and people enjoyed doing it, and they essentially created their own moments of awesome because they felt good just being a part of it. At this point, there is so much noise, there's so much just shit out there that everybody's doing that we have to really make sure to make those moments special. And if you're paying attention and you're looking at your community, you're looking at the people that are coming in, you can figure out pretty damn easy what they think is special. Look at somebody's Twitter bio and pick something out of that and focus on that. And if you do that as your community, whether it's mentioning beer, Aaron and I were talking about beer before this, like that's really awesome, and we have that sort of a connection. You figure out that one thing. That's what we are as community managers. We're the ones that have to try to figure out what we have in common with you. Not what you have in common with us, but what we have in common with you. And then you make that one thing known in a tweet or in an email or in a Facebook post or wherever you are. That's the type of thing that creates retention. We were shocked 3 years ago when a brand would mention us or talk about us because we weren't used to that. We're used to it now. So because we are, it has to be that extra level deep of connection. And you could do it pretty easily, but I mean, you do it authentically like that, and you're going to have somebody that's going to stick around until that next moment of awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I think you can take that one step further as well and connect them with someone else in the community. And that's even really, to me, the horizontal relationships are even stronger than the vertical relationship with the brand. Just to the fact that like you and I sat here and like promoted Nimble and they're not even here or knowing that we're talking about them. Like that's pretty powerful if you have that kind of relationship going on.
Exactly. I know that I don't want to sound like a broken record saying the same things on this, but I mentioned before, as a community manager, you're the host of a dinner party. That's basically what you are. I'm not the one that's supposed to be talking. I'm supposed to be connecting Sherry with Aaron. I'm supposed to be the one connecting Bessie with Brew. That's what I'm supposed to be doing, and those are the ones that actually end up lasting because that's not scalable. If you have a community of 5,000 people, you can't be in constant contact with all 5,000 of them. But if you connect 2,500 with 2,500, those people are talking, they're still a part of your community, and it's going to last, and they're going to want to bring more people in.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything Dom just said. I mean, you could use there's any number of CRM plugins that you could use in Gmail. When you start getting signups into MailChimp or whatever else it is, like the tools will amplify your ability to at least see who the person is, especially if you don't know who they are already. But you still have to do the homework. You got to go into looking at their Twitter feeds. You got to do your Facebook or your LinkedIn or your Twitter stalking and see what they actually talk about, see what they actually write about, and kind of get to know them. And so when you make an initial contact, it's a real contact. It's like coming with something of an interest that you have as a manager, and the idea of plugging that person into other people in the community already. You're not just the host of a dinner party. You're also kind of a matchmaker. You're trying to help build new relationships inside that community, and so like that's how you get people on boarded because you're plugging them into the social interaction that is supposed to continue, and you try to put. And I think most of us try to match people up with people who are goals that the community has, so they're modeling the engagement for you.
I'm going to bring in another question here from Twitter. And this question comes from Emma Irwin. Emma, thanks for joining us. She's at Sunny Developers, so make sure you follow her on Twitter. She asks, how do you measure sentiment versus headcounts? Anybody have any sentiment? I know. I mean, just just from a tool standpoint, I know in Hootsuite, just from Twitter alone, there's a sentiment tool that they have in their reporting feature. That's about all I know top of mind. That's easy to get to sentiment stuff. Do any of you guys have any experience with sentiment?
Yeah, you can also use I think it's called mention, perhaps. If your brand has a unique name, you can use that. Social mention, I think, is what it is. If your brand doesn't have a unique name, it's a little bit harder, but that's a good way to track it around the web.
What was that called again, Sherry?
I'll double check it. I think it's just mention, but let me go find it. It won't take me long to
Sweet.
Google it.
Awesome.
I would.
Most analytics tool they provide you with this facility. So it's essentially they allow you to punch in a keyword which you can call positive and a keyword which you can call negative. So it's pretty much based on some keywords, and as it turns out that so a word like shit can be used for good and bad at the same time. So it becomes pretty difficult to figure out if it's a good shit or a bad shit, and then people don't. So sentiment analysis is something which has been like intriguing people for a while, but it's not really a very nice measure of when you want to measure the sentiment of a community. It used to be, I mean, 3-4 years ago, it used to be all rage all over the town, but there are 10 other things that you also have to look at other than just the sentiments.
I agree with Abhishek completely. I think sentiment is a good measure to have, but it shouldn't be just your definitive measure, because there are communities that you will not be able to measure the sentiment realistically, because some of the words that they're using have a double intention. So they might be, this is sick, but they're meaning this is really cool. So I personally don't just, go by sentiment alone. I go by what the conversation is as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. One thing that I can say as far as sentiment goes, I had an hour-long demonstration from a good guy, Steve, over at Nuvi, NUVI.com. Nuvi has really, really good sentiment monitors. They do all of their own stuff over there, and they've sort of made their own algorithm for it. So at the same time, they make it's great visuals for it. So I mean, as far as sentiment goes, if it's something that you need to take to the C-suite, not necessarily what you're looking at, they do a fantastic job of that kind of stuff. And they also, because it's their own algorithm, they're very intuitive, and you can sort of tweak things. I use sick all the time because I pretend that I'm 5 years younger than I am. So it's something that you can sort of tweak depending on the brand. If you're Converse, you're probably going to have kids that are saying sick about how your stuff is good, but if you're a law firm, sick probably isn't the greatest term for you. So it allows you, at least within that, especially if you're on the agency standpoint, to really tweak it when it comes to it.
Well, I think from a sentiment standpoint too, as the community manager, you have a feeling like today was awesome or today sucked, right? And so I think it's a blend of that, but the tools are also helpful just from a general perspective. I get that, yeah, sometimes it'll be, are they saying this is the shit or this is shit, right? However, I think that even though it's not a perfect science, at least seeing somewhat of like, wow, there was an overwhelming amount of green in my keywords today for positiveness, or what's with all the red, can definitely help you in communities where you may not be in touch with the community every single day yourself. Especially if you have a team. I find sentiment, like the simple sentiment analysis, just to be like, hey, I'm going to check in with the community manager who was on shift that day, because this looks really off, and maybe there's something that we missed. And
just to add to what you just said, it's really important to understand, like, yeah, these are your communities. And I think sometimes when people are expecting you to explain what is the sentiment or how is this reaction, or they just see a whole ton of red and they don't understand why, you have to, in a way, stand your ground, and you are the person behind these communities, growing them and monitoring them and creating these relationships, because it is a human being to human being connection. It's just over the web and through these mediums. So I think as community managers, you do have to have that trust in what you're putting out there, and also have the responsibility for the consequences that will come with what you're putting out there. It's very, very much a personality trait that community managers have to develop.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I'm going to jump us into our next question. which is, I believe, question number 4. How can you help a community member feel more connected? And I think, Sherry, you had the first. You said something earlier about making sure you introduce them to somebody. I think that was you or maybe Dom. The other thing on this question, just to kind of tee things off, is I really think about Trish, formerly of VSnap, when early on in the community, and even when it was growing fast, she would every day pick X amount of people who were new to the platform and send them a personalized video message and say welcome and sort of just put a face and a voice and kind of some personality behind the brand and the platform. And I think that's one thing that's really important as far as feeling connected, is make them feel like they're connected to a person and bring some humanity into things. And if you are going to send automated emails, because you have to, because of scale, make sure that those emails really don't sound like a marketing department of 12 and 5 engineers all got together and wrote it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And just for the sake of everybody, just save me from having a stroke. How about we don't send any more automated DMs? We could just stop those in general. I'll lead that revolution and have 1 million people agree with me. But when you're talking about when you're talking about people that send those personalized videos, I think of Movi and Lori from Movi. She does that all the time, and I know that there are probably 10 to 15 people right now on Twitter that have had her do that, where she was in some sort of a chat. Even if she talked to you like once, she'll send you a direct, like, a personalized video message. Now obviously, like, when they have a community of 200,000, she can't send a direct one to everybody. But then you can have a team, I think, of Buffer and the Buffer chat. They have 3 people that do their chat, and they send actual personalized messages to people. That humanity aspect of it is so huge when it comes to making somebody feel connected. Yeah, sure, it feels cool if you're like, yeah, Buffer tweeted at me. But then again, if I go, wow, Mary from Buffer tweeted at me, or Adam from Buffer sent me a DM, or Lori from Movi sent me this, like, those are the types of stories that we share. Jack Threads has sent me a tweet, but I don't know who that was. It was just some company that I bought a tank top from. Like, when you get that actual human contact from it, people really, really love it. So.
I really love this answer I just saw on Twitter from PSCO. It said, do your homework, check them out on other social networks, search their name in Google, etc. Even just taking the time to do a little background check can definitely help make your introduction to them a little more contextual, a little more relevant. That was awesome. So what else? What other things have you guys seen or feel good about making them feel connected to the community?
So I know about a tool which is there. It's called MailLift, and what they allow you to do is they allow you to send handwritten letters to your users or your customers or your community members. So as Dom just said, you have to. It's just plain simple, plain old grind which you have to do. You have to find out people who you want to talk with and be consistently doing that over a period of time. That's the only way to do it. No matter how many number of tools you have and automated replies you can have, but it will never equate the personalized messages or the attention which you give to your set of members and customers. That's the best way to do it. So MailLift is a great tool which I have come across recently, and they're doing some good job.
Yeah, for sure. Handwritten notes are always a good touch. Even better if you do it yourself rather than using a tool, though, I'd have to say. But another way I feel like you can really get people connected is something that we do, which is really just invite them to share their story with us. Our communities are very health condition focused, and so allowing someone to share what they've been through and how they've had to adjust their life because of it, and really just giving someone else encouragement through knowing that they're not alone and that they're facing similar struggles as well has been really big. But even if there's not a way for them to share their specific story, like helping them find a way to become a part of your story as well is really good.
So one of the things I think that is our role as community managers is that when somebody has something to say, and whether it's a contrary point that needs to be voiced or given voice to, or it's a contributory point and nobody's hearing it because there's other stuff going on. Like, I think it's our job to actually like elevate that message, and escalate it to the point where everybody else can see it, and your kind of like derived informal authority that comes from being that community gatherer, like starts lending some some validation towards that perspective. And like that kind of like that one connects that person who might have been an outlier, but it actually might have something really important to contribute to the community, and brings that to life. I mean, that also helps kind of like, sometimes that's a provocative thing to kind of re-energize the interactions in the community, and sometimes that's an affirming thing to basically be like, okay, we've kind of decided this as a community, now there's other things to do.
And to your point, Aaron, of the questions, or if someone wants to say something, I think many times when someone joins a community and they want to start getting engaged, they bring up conversations or ask questions, and I think as the manager, you need to reply as well if nobody has replied, just to understand your voice has been heard. What do you want to say? What's your question? How can we help you? Just so that they feel nurtured. I think that's the most important part of any community. You need to nurture all members, and even if their question seems so basic that they don't deserve an answer, everybody deserves an answer.
Bessie, that's the one of the best pieces of advice I got a couple of years ago in terms of like how to start building community, is to allow some of the easy problems to go unsolved, because for new people into the community, that's their first foray into actually contributing, and so like that kind of starts building that habit, and that also then respects the people who have been there for a while, because they don't need to be burning cycles on doing things that are kind of like beneath them, or just they can be spending their cycles doing something more meaningful, more complex, that requires their experience both in the community and in the professional or personal lives to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Aaron. That's actually how I ended up in community management, by jumping in and helping newbies answer some of those questions I had figured out, so that the smarter people hanging around could help me with the questions I then had. But it's a really good way for people to get involved.
And that's really good too. I mean, and that really pulls into the, like, how do you really get people to feel sort of bought into the community and that retention? You give them a little bit of responsibility like that. You take somebody that can answer the questions, and you ask them to answer that for you. It's like, hey, did you see this? Could you respond to that? Like, at that point, you're really starting to get people to buy into the brand, to buy into the community. They feel really, really they feel needed in the fact that they're actually bringing value to it, and it helps you out, because it's as a community manager, it does save you some time having to respond to that, but at the same time, you're getting somebody who's getting even more bought in, and that if they enjoy the taste of that, if they enjoy a little bit of responsibility, they'll ask you for a little bit more, and you're really getting somebody who's super loyal, who's going to do a lot of that for you.
All right, cool. I'm going to bring in two more questions. One I just couldn't help but bring in. It's Leah says, is it okay to include GIFs in email? I did answer it on Twitter. It said absolutely, but then I found this animated GIF that said hell yes, which I thought was just perfect. Our next question is...
And I agree. I love GIFs. Okay, cool.
Next, yeah, they're great. Actually, Gmail totally supports GIFs. And it's the animated GIFs, which is pretty awesome. Anyways, Michael, thanks for joining us on Friday. He has a question for the panel. Do you keep a journal to track the relationships and general temperature of the community?
I personally do, and it's actually one of our supervisors makes fun of me for is like, oh, this paper, what are you doing with paper? But it helps me a lot, and it helps me track, what people responded to, and just make a mental note, aside from a mental note, a physical note that reminds me people really like this and people didn't like that so much. Because in the day-to-day, yes, you can always log into, your tools and do the analysis and get the reports, but simply just keeping a journal makes it more, I don't want to say authentic, but it's just a little more physical effort to understand your community a little better. When you write, physically write, things get processed differently in your brain. That's just the writer in me, I guess.
No, I agree with Bessie, and so this what you do, people call that decision journal, and in fact the best of the best financial guys, they also maintain a decision journal in spite of having all the fintech around them and all the technology around them. So it's essentially writing down, I took this decision on the basis of these reasons, and if they work out, you exactly know. So that's a great way of putting your decisions in the context of your community, and that works over a period of time. I also do that. I mean, that's something which everyone does in our team, because that's kind of mandatory to keep a decision journal. That's a very nice thing to do.
Yeah, as you guys were answering that, I was grabbing out my Moleskine, which I've got just a ton of stuff written in just daily, where it might not be as dedicated of a habit, like I'm doing it every single day, but there's I have dates on the top of every single one of these pages, and there's stuff that's inside of it, and I know where I need to find it if I need to, and it's that kind of stuff that really it just makes it a little bit more real to be able to go back to. And nothing, honestly, like I couldn't imagine how awesome I would feel if I was a community member and I had that brand take a screenshot, or just a screenshot, take a picture of something that they actually wrote down in hand saying, this is awesome, really like that person, or something like that, just something cool like that. How fantastic would that be to take that? And I mean, that would make me feel awesome, and that's a barometer I use a lot, is like, would I really enjoy this happening? So maybe I would do this for a community member, not think about it too much, and you're going to build a relationship like that with somebody.
All right, guys, we've got about 12 minutes till the end of the show, so I'm going to swing us over to question number 5 here, which is, how do you assess whether or not you're providing needed value?
Based on the moderation actions or the kind of prodding actions, if there's, I look at it in terms of like, is there action? Is there a response? Are we meeting the goals that we set out to do when we take action? I personally like when people are pissed off at me and not at each other. I feel like that's a win. And likewise, like when they're not pissed off at me and not pissed off at each other, that's also a win. So.
No, I agree with Aaron as well, but in our communities, again, being business to business and being much more serious, they needed a little bit more fun, and so we noticed that because they were asking for more images, or we were getting more likes in certain types of lighthearted posts or content, even emails, and so just posting more video or posting the Throwback Thursday, we started doing that for flaw detectors, and who the heck knew that people would enjoy old photos of flaw detectors? That's the industry I'm in. It's non-destructive testing. So we realized that people really wanted the education, but they also wanted just to like interact in a more fun, lighthearted way that they don't get a chance to do anywhere else. So when you realize that you are getting response to something new, that's the way that I consider, success in measuring a new tactic. How are people responding in a positive way? Of course, the negative too, but mostly the positive, to see if you want to repeat this again.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that, Bessie. And I mean, you know, you want to just get really, really simple with it. I think that a great way to to assess whether you're providing needed value is to just ask people if you think that that you're providing value. A lot of times we have tons of tools out there, and the tools are fantastic, and people slave away at these things. But one of the easiest things, I mean, I'm with our startup right now, we're working through the lean startup, and we're running experiments daily. Experiments makes us seem very Dr. Frankenstein, but we're running these experiments, and we're literally just asking people, do you want this? What do you think about this? And when you're in a community, you could do the same thing, because the most raw feedback, you're going to get a lot of different answers if you just open it up for questions, but the most raw that you're going to get is if you just straight up ask somebody, hey, what do you think about this? And they're going to be people are not used to answering that question. They're used to having it so it's like, oh yeah, all of this data can tell you whether I like it or not. But if I just ask you, hey, do you like red or blue? And you know, overwhelmingly it's red, guess what? The color scheme on our stuff, it's probably going to be red. Even though I personally like blue, you like it better, so you're going to want to be there. It's really, really easy to do that. You know, not saying that those tools aren't great, because they really are. But just opening it up like that, we open source for a bunch of other stuff, so why don't we do it for just, hey, are we providing any value for you, yes or no?
That's a good point. I mean, even you know, SurveyMonkey, right? Just sending out surveys and tweeting and posting that in Facebook or in your forums or whatever. And I really like the idea of it being open-ended, even though that probably is much more work for you or somebody else to distill that down. Then the answers aren't forced, you know, into some preconceived buckets. I'm going to jump us into our sixth question. We might have time for one or two questions, so we always like to lighten things up. So if you have a kind of funnier question, you can even tweet that in, and we'll answer that as well. Our final question for today is, how do you react or reactivate an absent but more established community member? So this is somebody who's been around for a while, but then all of a sudden that person goes dark. What are some ways to reactivate them?
Here's a fun one. Take a corny 1980s love ballad and put that over some animated words about how much you miss somebody. Or if you want to be really good, just go out in the rain, put on your best John Cusack face, and hold a boombox over your head. And then have it be like, oh, we miss you. Like stuff like that, as long as you know that they're not gone because of like a serious reason. You know, something like that is just kind of fun. And you're probably going to get somebody to come back at 125% instead of maybe 80 because they feel guilty. You know, you have to make it sort of fun and sort of play into something you guys have talked about before, and you could really get somebody back in.
Yeah, and going back to Abhishek's point of the handwritten letter, it doesn't hurt to touch base in a more personal way too. And you know, in some cases, after completing a sale or you know something more elaborate with a customer, we do tend to have those periods where it's just quiet because our sales take longer to take place. But in the between, a handwritten letter or a phone call or asking them person to person, how is it going? Like, what's happening? Because they just don't want to come in and interact with a whole group is invaluable. So understanding who those key people are and touching base with them as a human being can be so good for your brand and your business.
All right, I'm going to bring in just a couple more questions here. First one is actually, so Judy had said, you know, is it a want or a need when we were talking about question number 5, which was assess whether or not you're providing needed value, in which Emma kind of responded, how do you prioritize the brand needs versus the community needs. And anybody have some thought around that?
Yeah, swallow your pride and realize that your community needs are more important than your brand needs. And you as a community manager, it's your job to convince the C-suite of that. Without your community's needs being met, your brand needs will never be met because you won't be your brand anymore. So swallow your pride and realize that.
Boom. All right, here's another question. Oh, go ahead. Did you have something you want to say, Aaron?
No, I was just basically going to say I can tell that Dom and I are about to be best friends. So yeah.
Somebody quick unearthy. Did we just become best friends? Animated GIF. Question for the panel from Kristen. She asked, "What was the best food you ate yesterday?" Even for you, Abhishek. Bonus points for deviled eggs. So I'll go first. My favorite food from yesterday had to be pumpkin pie. That's one I don't. You would think you can get pumpkin pie like any time of the year, but for some reason I only eat it on Thanksgiving. So
I had some delicious blueberry apple pie, and the crust was just fantastic. To me, Thanksgiving is all about desserts. The turkey was great and all, but the pie was just fantastic.
So since I'm from India, so I have to maybe sound a bit exotic, but it's not. Like I just had a very average, basic Indian fare, which is the flat chapatis or the breads, the flat breads, and the stir-fried vegetables and the lentils, which is, and then you add lots of curd to it. So that's pretty much what I had yesterday, and the so-called best food. Yes, that's about it.
Sounds delicious.
That sounds delicious.
So I'm in Canada, and our Thanksgiving is actually in October, not November. But yesterday, I have to say, okay. What?
Nothing.
Yes, Dom? Okay, now you're muted again, whatever. Anyway, probably the most delicious thing I ate yesterday was mint dark chocolate, even though it's arguably not a food.
All right. Keep things on the light level here. Anyone have a quick GIF of Dom as Dr. Frankenstein? We don't, but I did find this awesome Did We Just Become Best Friends animated GIF, which I thought was appropriate.
That is literally how I live my life, to attempt to get to that level with as many people as possible.
So we have one more question we're going to bring in to close us out. But first, Sherry, if you could let everybody know what's going on next Friday, and then let's talk a little bit about CMAD real quick.
Yeah, so next Friday we're talking about community overlap kind of in the context of competition, which if you're not really familiar with that term, it's when competing companies work together in partnership. And so that topic was actually brought into us by Tia from Unbounced, so she'll be here. And just let us know if you want to be on panel with us. Definitely, we have room. And then January 26th, 2015 is Community Manager Appreciation Day. We have almost all of our panel organizers lined up, which is really exciting. Panel topics coming in. So that schedule will be live very soon. And we definitely have room for people to sponsor the event still and to get involved with it in different ways, including even just sharing your story on the site about how you became a community manager.
And for those of you who don't know, we actually we have an awards program we roll out, so community managers can get nominated for all different awesome awards. It's really a day where we try to encourage people to recognize how important community management is, and then we also do a 24-hour broadcast. So we'll be all locked up in a studio and bringing people in from all around the world and talking just like this, but for 24 hours. So with that, I just wanted to bring in our kind of close up, which is I think Ed says I think hashtag CMGR Hangout should end with Dom Garrett singing "We Are Family," and maybe you could put it on Moby. So I don't know, Dom, you think you could handle that?
I think I might be able to do it. So I'll go ahead and do this. thanks everybody for joining, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
We are family.